Hello, and welcome to the final instalment in our Bridge to the Future bonus edition series. In this episode, Ingrid Jack will be looking at the impact of technology on the new not-for-profit workplace. Hope you enjoy.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest in the series of the Adapta Bridge to the Future sessions. Today I'm going to be talking about the future of technology in the not-for-profit workplace. What might the future look like, the future of technology in the not-for-profit workplace over the course of the next 5 or 10 years? Just to introduce myself, I'm Ingrid Jack. I'm one of the Adapta Associate Consultants and a freelance consultant. And my focus is really on working with IT systems and business change. So really helping organisations to get the most out of their investment in business technology. So I describe myself as a techie on the inside with a business change architect on the outside. And my focus is really on helping organisations to move to more effective modern ways of working using either the technology that they've got or choosing the right forms of technology to move to enable more effective modern ways of working. I should probably also say I'm a trustee of 2 small charities, and I typically work across both commercial and charities and not-for-profit organisations. So let's start by looking back a little bit about what we've learned over the course of the last 12 months. I would suggest that the disruption of the pandemic has been one of the greatest seismic shifts in ways of working over the course of the last 100 years or so. And some organisations have fared the pandemic fairly successfully. And I would suggest there are 3 characteristics that those who have operated really successfully over the course of the pandemic have had. The first is they already had tools or systems and processes and policies in place that allowed people to work remotely and flexibly. Clearly, that gave them a step ahead as everybody started to work remotely. Secondly, those successful organisations had already moved some or all of their IT systems to the cloud so that they could successfully be accessed by anyone from anywhere. Well, anyone within the organisation and using any device. And thirdly, a third characteristic of successful organisations was those that had a really people-focused approach to the way that they work and the way that they delivered services. And they spent time in the early stages of the pandemic and over the course of the last year to really understand the impact of the changes that the pandemic has brought. And then were able to flex the way that they work and the way they deliver their services and the way they expect people to work. And I think organisations that have had at least 2 or 3 of those characteristics in place are the ones that have been able to adapt most effectively to ensure that they deliver as much continuity of service as possible and have really supported their people to work as flexibly and effectively as possible. But as I say, I think the disruption of the pandemic has been one of the greatest seismic shifts in working practices for the past 100 years or so. The model of the knowledge economy that we've been working in for the last few decades has been based on an expectation that largely you pull all your clever people together into one place or a small number of hubs where they can work together effectively to achieve the objectives of your organisation. But many organisations have really ably demonstrated over the course of the last year that many activities and tasks can continue to be delivered just as effectively even when everyone is working remotely. And organisations are taking this as an opportunity to seriously consider a shift in the ways that they work and perhaps enabling a larger proportion of their people to work remotely, some or all of the time, in a model that's increasingly being called hybrid working, where people spend a proportion of their time working remotely and maybe coming together for the time and activities where they really need to be working with others. One knock-on implication of this is that office space may need to be redesigned, and Bev and Philippa talk about this in their session as well, and thinking about redesigning and repurposing office space as collaboration space rather than as many individual personal working spaces. And so I think, you know, we've got the context of the pandemic over the course of the last year, but I think it's also worth thinking back a little bit from a technology perspective in terms of what are the shifts that we've seen in technology over the course of the last 10 years, and then that will allow us to look forward to think about what we're seeing coming down the line. And I think in the last 10 years, probably the biggest shift that we've seen in technology is a move from you buy software, you build it in your environment, you customize it for your organization's need, and your corporate network is your perimeter. So as long as you're working within that, then you can get access to all the tools and resources that you need. And that worked really well when your people were largely working in an office and working in one place, or with a percentage of people working remotely. But we started to see a shift from a technology perspective, and we've seen this really over the course of the last 5 or 10 years. It's not new, but now increasingly it's the default approach for most technology solutions. And that's that shift to subscription and cloud-based solutions. So you no longer buy the software, install it on your own servers and configure it yourself, but you subscribe to a service, and that service evolves over time. The benefit of that, of course, is that you can is that from a consumer perspective, you can take advantage of new developments in technologies very quickly, rather than having to wait until the next big upgrade. But it still depends upon you have this model still depends upon you having quite a high degree of central control over the identities of people in your organization. So who works for you, what services have they got access to? And if you're a charity or a membership organization, you're probably still very dependent upon some of your key data sources being in very heavily managed data stores. So things like your CRM systems and your other line of business applications. And I think that shift from buy, build, and customize to subscribe and configure cloud services is a shift that many organizations have made over the course of the last few years. But I think what we're seeing in the charity and not-for-profit sector is that many organizations still haven't really made that shift from on-premise services to cloud-based services, or they're in the very early stages of that. And I would suggest that that shift becomes the effective foundation, really, that you need to make for your people to be able to use services effectively and work remotely. So now is the time to make those changes if you haven't already, because I think they will become the foundation for the ways of working, and the technology that supports those ways of working will evolve over the course of the next 10 years. So if you had that digital transformation project that you were contemplating in late 2019 or early 2020, and you haven't yet implemented it, now is the time to really progress it. I would suggest that shift from on-premise service and services to subscription-based cloud services, it should become one of your highest priorities in 2021, because that will become the fundamental basis, not just for effective hybrid working today, but also for the future technologies that I think we see coming down the line. So let's look forward a little bit. Where might this be going? What should I be looking out for in the next 5 or 10 years? Well, looking forward, I think we'll see the rise of a number of things. And I think there are probably 4 key threads that we'll see from a technology perspective that will have an impact on the way that we work. And I'll talk through those in detail. So the first of those is what I call bring your own identity. So at the moment, I said, you're very much dependent upon people working for your organization and you being able to give them access to the technology and tools and resources that they need. But I think we'll see the rise of trusted sources of identity, things like digital passports. I know we've talked about them in the past, but I think we'll now see real trusted global identity providers that allow people to take their own identity data with them. And I think this could massively improve a couple of things within the charity and not-for-profit sector. The first is effectively being able to work with external partners and agencies and other collaborators. So being able to give them access to the tools and resources that you need them to have access to for the period of time that you're working with them. I think it will also massively improve the ease of onboarding new people into your organization. So instead of having to equip them with everything that they need to work in your organization, they bring their identity and you plug them in to give them access to the resources that they need. I think this might well also support the move that we're seeing across all sectors, but also particularly in the not-for-profit and charity sector, the move towards the kind of gig economy, where increasing numbers of your people may not work for you full-time or long-term, but you bring them in to work on a project, or perhaps they work for you whilst also working for another organisation. That way they can bring their own identity, you can plug them in, give them access to the tools and resources that you need. When you no longer work with them, you can very easily disconnect them, so there's no risk of them still having access to resources within your organisation that they no longer require. So the first big trend I think we'll see will be that trend of bring your own identity. The second trend I think we'll see is a trend of bring your own data. One of the reasons that many not-for-profits and charities still have out of support and perhaps creaking central systems is because they've got so much business critical data in them. No one is brave enough to risk the disruption and the cost of moving to a more modern solution. And I think we'll start to see services that provide the ability for organisations to easily provide their own data for ingestion and processing for a particular purpose, or maybe for an ongoing service. But I think this will make it much easier for charities and not-for-profits to move between systems and to move between service suppliers, as well as take advantage of specialist systems and services when you need them. So the ability to provide a huge amount of your data for a significant amount of analysis to allow you to make strategic decisions, but without having to invest in a service long term. So I think bring your own data will be the second trend that we see in the next 5 to 10 years. The third trend I think we'll see is increasing use of analytics, and we're already starting to see this in lots of commercial services that are available today. So, for example, in Office 365, analytics that are surfaced both to administrators to allow you to understand which tools and services are people using within your organisation so that you can make best use of those, but also analytics that is now served up to the individual. So those of you who've got Office 365 accounts will know you get a weekly email that gives you some insights in terms of the way you work, the way you schedule your time, the way you collaborate with other people, and offers suggestions around how you might improve that. So really simple examples of taking a look at your calendar and offering to schedule focus time, because it can see that actually your calendar tends to get very, very booked up. So actually, why not book out some focus time in advance that others can't overbook, just to give you that breathing space and breathing time. And I think the increasing use of analytics, not just looking at external data that organisations have, but really looking at internal analytics to allow your people to work more effectively, to focus on the well-being of your people, and to allow much more effective internal working and organisation and positive employee and customer, employee and volunteer well-being. So I think we'll see increasing use of analytics. The services that we consume and buy actually will already provide us insight into the way that we use them and allow us to use them more effectively. And the fourth trend I think we'll see is increasing use of artificial intelligence. We've heard much about artificial intelligence in the press, and it is often felt like it's something that's a way off and it's not really connected with the way that we work today. But I think we'll see over the course of the next decade increasing use of artificial intelligence to help organisations to make sense of the data that they have. So, for example, in things like supporter relationships, so that might be from very simple things like bots that help you to offload straightforward information provision and simple transactions, through to much more in-depth personalised understanding of supporter engagement and the way that your supporters engage with you as an organisation, and perhaps their giving patterns, so that you can actually maximise the marketing spend whilst also improving supporter relationships. So I think we will see AI increasingly across all of our systems and providing the ability to deliver real insights that actually, from a human perspective, are really hard to come to because we simply don't have sufficient people and brain power to process the information that we have. Whereas I think artificial intelligence will allow us to see patterns that we may not see as humans. And ultimately, all of these trends are about delivering systems and tools and processes that are much more people focused. So making it easier for people to work for you and with you, and taking away some of the kind of tedious, time consuming tasks so that your people can focus on the much more engaging and higher value tasks that actually deliver towards your charitable aims and objectives, or build member and supporter relationships. So what else do we think we might see? I think we're already seeing this, but an increasing rise in virtual events and conferences. Many organisations have realised that actually they're able to extend their reach, both in terms of supporters and delivering their services, but also by engaging with potentially whole new populations of people, by delivering their services virtually rather than in person. And I think events are probably the really significant category here, because virtual events may cost less to deliver, and they certainly cost less to attend. I don't think we'll replace all in-person events with virtual events, but I think we will see increasingly a rise of organisations choosing to use virtual events and conferences, perhaps alongside in-person events and activities as well. And as a result of that, of course, there's a technical impact, because there'll be an increasing need to bring in-house the kind of digital media skills that you might have previously worked with specialist agencies to deliver on an occasional basis. And you'll also need to train your senior leadership in the art of delivering a great on-camera message rather than an in-person on-stage presentation. And I think this is the move from theatrical skills to television skills. So the ability to learn a script, the ability to engage with a camera, the ability to deliver a message clearly and concisely. It's very different skills to the skills that people might have had when needing to engage 2,000 people in a room. So I think we'll see a continuing rise of the use of virtual events and conferences. And thinking about kit and thinking about employees and those who work for you, I think modern workforce expectations have changed, and it's no longer okay for non-profits and charities to have out-of-date technology and you'd be using outdated kit. Increasingly, people across all the generations expect the organisations they work for and with to provide effective and efficient technology. And Philippa and Bev touched on the need for this when they were talking about, in their session, when they were talking about the need to be purpose-driven and aspirational as an organisation. And I think this extends into the way that you use technology. And it's important that the technology that you use and the technology you provide relates really well to the technology that people use and engage with in their personal lives. So actually there is an expectation that you will provide IT kit that is not just fit for purpose, but is aspirational and allows people to work really effectively. And so what does that mean in terms of the kind of IT kit that we might provide for our people to use? Well, I think the pandemic has taught us that mobility is absolutely key. So with the exception of a very small number of roles that really need significant computing power, laptops, tablets and mobile phones will probably replace all of your desktops, all of your thin client terminals, all of your Citrix clients and such like. And so if you haven't made that shift, I think now is the time to really plan for those shifts. But I also think that these devices will continue to evolve and develop at the same pace that they have done in the last 10 years. If not faster. And so I think devices will actually become less important as the bulk of the processing and customization and artificial intelligence will take place in the cloud. So I think augmented reality might also become an increasing part of the way that we provide information to staff and volunteers and supporters. So overlaying information to people when and where they need it, anticipating people's next steps, prompting for the next best actions. So I think we'll see a change in the kind of the IT kit that people use. I think increasingly we'll move away from the use of mouse and keyboard and increasingly to the use of touch and voice as methods of input. Exactly what that looks like, we'll all have to see as the technology evolves. And what about things like productivity solutions, the kind of things that people use on a day-to-day basis, the tools that allow you to create documents, allow you to communicate and collaborate with each other? Well, I think we've seen these become much more people and behaviour focused over the course of the last decade. Tools increasingly are designed to operate the way that people think and start to offer suggestions about how you might want to work more effectively. If I think back to some of the hurdles that they used to have when in the days of things like early word processors, the difficulty that we would encounter just to create a simple document, and then compare that to the ease of using Microsoft Word or Google Docs today, and you can see just how far we've come. And I think that shift will continue, and tools will increasingly preempt and provide ideas. I think it'll become increasingly easy to collaborate and share with each other. And I think that this will overlap with the bring your own identity and bring your own data trends that I discussed earlier. And so alongside these, of course, and I think we've seen in the context of things like the Office 365 suite and Google's G Suite, that increasingly there are a collection of tools that are designed to work together and to work in ways that users can work more effectively. We've seen over the course of the last year the rise of functionality in tools like Zoom and Teams, really very much in response to the needs of people as they're working remotely. And I think we'll continue to see those trends. And alongside all of these trends, privacy and security concerns remain absolutely paramount, and we cannot afford to ignore them as charities and not-for-profits. The exponential rise of cybercrime has not left charities unaffected, and we've seen a number of high-profile cases in the last few years. As charities and not-for-profits are often seen as soft targets because they hold very large amounts of data that is of huge value to cybercriminals, personal information, payment information, potentially also things like religious and political affiliations. And charities and not-for-profits have often traditionally lagged behind the commercial sector in terms of their focus on privacy and security. And I think increasingly this will become a differentiating feature as members and supporters and recipients of services will expect organisations to handle and protect their data effectively. And so finally, we've thought about lots of areas of technology and what the future of the technology in the workplace and not-for-profit sector might look like. But I think really, really significantly, change is going to be inevitable, but it's not always easy. And it's really important to actively engage all of your people and to support them in the adoption of new ways of working. Technology on its own will achieve nothing, but technology with great engagement of your people will give you the ability to manage change successfully. And we've seen historically in the past that organisations that actively engage their people in designing the best solutions and then significantly provide great support to help their people to adapt to the change. And that's not just about a bunch of emails and a training course. It's about really designing the solutions to work well for people and then helping them to understand how to work effectively in the new ways of working and using new technologies to deliver the outcomes and the outcomes that you're looking to deliver. So personally, I think the future of technology in the world of the not-for-profit workplace is really bright. I'm looking forward to seeing how some of the things that I've talked about develop and evolve. But I think what this year has really given us and the disruption of the pandemic has given every organisation an opportunity to really step back and think about how do you make the most of the technology that's available to you today, and what's the foundation that you're building that will allow you to really successfully work over the course of the next 5 to 10 years and take advantage of some of the trends that I've talked about. So thanks so much for listening. Thanks for taking the time. I hope that some of these insights might be useful and valuable to you. And Adapta are always happy to work with you and to pick up any questions that you might have following this session. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Please do keep an eye on our website and our newsletter for more episodes, more insights, more forecasts from Adapta Consulting. Till then, goodbye.